I'm host Sway Crims Rohano here with Kenny Wisdom, and it looks like we're finally reaching the halfway point of today's day one, at least, right?
Yeah, been a long day, but a lot of rounds of these regionals these days.
Man, these regionals are no joke anymore. 500 players. That's an insane number. Like, if you remember a couple of years ago when we had like 200 players and we were like, ooh,
oh, yeah.
This is a big one. So to reach 500 players is just, it's grueling. That's probably the best way to describe it. Remember a couple of weeks ago, you and I were at Arizona Regionals and we both played, and halfway to day one, I was like, oh, give me some snacks, Kenny. let me wake up, bro. I'm dying here.
Absolutely. The combination of 9 rounds on day one, an additional 5 Swiss rounds on day 2, best of 3 is so mentally tiring.
It really is. It's so grueling for these players, which is why it's even more exciting and awe-inspiring to see some of these players, some of the best players, always come to the top. Come out at the top. It's like, how do you keep playing so consistently? How do you keep doing so well every tournament? Like when I'm just like dead by round 5.
Absolutely, absolutely. I do remember the days back when regionals will all be one day and you'd play 8 rounds and then you'd play a top 32 playoff, and you wouldn't finish until 2 a.m. So this system definitely gets people to bed and gets people dinner at an earlier hour, but still grueling nonetheless.
Oh, man, it really is. But anyway, we finally reached the halfway point of day one. We are about to enter round 5, but we still have a little bit of time to kill. So I kind of wanted to take a look at some another deck, do another deck analysis for you guys, because remember, Expanded is a format that not everybody's okay with, not everybody's comfortable with. People just don't have that much testing time in with these cards. So it's important to let you guys know exactly what decks can actually, first of all, be seen, but second of all, be expected and actually come out at the top of regionals. So if you guys would not mind, we can kick it off to the Pokemon Trading Card Game Online program, so we can take a look at a deck list that we just pulled up, which is actually, it features some of the Pokemon that we saw earlier, which is kind of why I wanted to pull it up. It's a Landorus deck, which actually features Crobat. It doesn't feature Manectric in our deck list, just because Justin Zimmerman's kind of an oddball. We didn't expect to see the Landorus with Manectric, but we do have a Landorus Crobat here to show you guys.
Yeah, Dustin's brewing a storm, but this is a kind of a more standard list. As you can see, we have Landorus and Crobat, both Pokemon that we've seen before. Taking a look at Landorus, one of the most powerful cards in the game. When it was first released, that Cities format, it was just very, very dominant. Hammerhead is able to do snipe on the bench. You have Land Judgment for a big attack. It's just high HP, high damage. It even, has a little bit of tricky options with Hammerhead. Land Judgment allows you to discard all your energy to do more if you need to. Just one of the most versatile cards in the game.
Yeah, most of the time it takes a card, at least a month or so in order to get really to jump right into the metagame, and most of the time people have to figure out the right deck list or whatnot. Hammerhead with Hammerhead Landorus was an exception to that rule. It seems like between like maybe Mewtwo EX and Landorus EX, these are the Pokemon that have just broken through the fastest. And Landorus EX has just probably got the best one energy attack in the game. Hammerhead just deals so much damage, and then when you combine it with things like Strong Energy, Fighting Stadium, Muscle Band, all these things, they just combine to deal so much damage that all of a sudden you don't really need that many energy cards in your deck because you're not going to be using that many.
Yeah, definitely. Landorus was kind of the start of the current era of big basics decks. I know that a lot of players during that Cities format, like I was saying, played just Landoruses and Mewtwo's, and it was just about attacking with big guys and just being very aggressive. Nowadays, we have a few more options. You can see a big part of the deck is Crobat and its Golbat line. Doing Surprise Bite, allowing you to drop damage counters on the board. Let you be a little tricky, let you spread out your damage. Obviously a very obvious combo with Hammerhead, letting you snipe the bench with Hammerhead and then Surprise Bite for knockouts. I'm sure we're going to see tons of that this weekend.
Oh, yeah, no kidding. Surprise Bite is, we've seen it earlier. It's just very versatile. It's very strong. It's extremely strong against things like Joltik, for example, which has 30 HP. The Combee, for example, when you evolve to a Golbat and then Hammerhead it, all of a sudden the Combee goes down. Things like that. That's what's relevant, and that's what makes this deck very strong, is that the metagame currently favors a lot of low HP Pokemon, which is where both Landorus and Crobat tend to shine. So when you combine them, now you can start hitting mid-HP Pokemon, like, for example, Pumpkaboo and stuff like that. So that's why this deck really does tend to shine. In the wrong metagame, the deck can just falter. It'll just, it just doesn't do anything because these Pokemon just have so much hit points. Like things like Mega Rayquaza give this deck a lot of trouble. You just can't knock out this Mega Rayquaza. You're just sitting there like a sitting duck, and the other Pokemon is just dealing 200 damage to you, and you're just sitting there dealing 60 or something like that. But in the right metagame, the deck shines. I play tested a ton of fighting. I didn't play test it with Crobat specifically. I play tested it with other cards, but at the same time, fighting just deals so much damage for so little energy that it's a force to be reckoned with for sure. And then, beyond Landorus, though, you do have other fighting Pokemon that deal a lot of damage. Things like, for example, Lucario EX. Lucario can Missile Jab you for 30 damage for 1 energy, but it doesn't get affected by resistance. So all of a sudden, things that resisted, like Shaman, for example, are actually being hit for a ton of damage once you add the strong energy, the fighting stadium, all that good stuff. Obviously, Corkscrew Smash is still relevant, and also Somersault Kick. But for the most part, you tend to see 1 energy attacks. That tends to be the theme of this deck. And obviously, let's not forget Hawlucha, everybody's favorite wrestling Pokemon.
Oh yeah, Hawlucha is just one of the most efficient, effective attackers in the game. Hitting EXs, having free retreat, not being an EX itself. Its Shining Spirit ability doesn't come into play too much, but it is nice to hit the Pokemon that are resistant to it. And yeah, this card's just been, one of the most effective non-EX attackers. We've talked a lot this weekend about prize trades and how all that works, and Hawlucha is definitely kind of the shining example of that. Hawlucha can knock out an EX, and then you respond, you knock out my 1 prize Hawlucha, nice, I'll attack with another one.
Exactly. Shining Spirit is especially strong against things like Shaman. If it wasn't for Shaman, then I would actually think that the ability is kind of mediocre. If that, if anything, it hurts you a little bit.
Right.
But because of Shaman, you actually can get big knockouts on Shamans, which honestly, everybody plays. So you put yourself in a situation where you can just steal knockouts, steal wins out of nowhere, specifically because of this Pokemon. An awesome combination is Hex Maniac with the Hawlucha, where I wonder if this deck plays it. I don't think this specific deck list plays it in our test deck there, but Hex Maniac, when combined with Hawlucha, can actually take off your Shining Spirit and let you knock out things like Manectric EX, basically fighting weak Pokemon. So it's really cool. These are little combinations that you find once you start playing the deck a lot. And again, Crobat becomes kind of like that reason why you can get these big knockouts for 1 energy, and that's just because it slowly but surely adds that damage.
Absolutely. And then, of course, like most decks in the format do, copy of Jirachi EX, Stellar Guidance, just one of the best abilities in the game. Allows you to get a copy of any of your supporters here, including, this deck runs an AZ, which is kind of a tech supporter, can be your 3rd Lysander. And then, of course, Shaman, the monster of the format. Every deck plays them. Setup is just an incredibly powerful ability.
This might be the strongest card in the game. It's probably the strongest Pokemon of the game for sure. Like, there's things like Battle Compressor, which give it a run for its money when it comes to the best card in the format. But Shaman EX is just an incredibly, incredibly powerful card. And the fact that it single-handedly lets you have explosive turns just by playing, 2 of it on your first turn, and you can all of a sudden start attacking with Mega Rayquaza EX for 200-plus damage. That's one of the main reasons why this format is so fast and aggressive. And one thing about AZ, though, which we were looking at earlier, is that it combos really well with Crobat and whatnot. So not only do you kind of want to play the AZ no matter what, specifically because of the high HP that Landorus gives you and the fact that you only lose 1 energy card from it, especially comboed with Focus Sash. But on top of that, you also have things like Crobat, which you can bring back up and just deal an extra 50 damage. So AZ is actually a very strong supporter in this deck, and it's not uncommon to see multiple copies of the AZ, but even 1 single copy with 4 Versus Seekers is very, very powerful.
Yeah, and even, AZ is just a powerful card for all the reasons you were mentioning, but also going back to, only having to attach with 1 energy, that's a huge benefit of AZ too. You have 1 energy Landorus, it's starting to get some damage on it. Well, you just AZ it up, discard the energy, sure, but it's only 1, reattach again and start attacking.
We have yet to see deck lists, but I can tell you guys that people are starting to sit down for round 5, and I saw 1 player only sit down, and that alone got me excited. So I can't wait for these deck lists. I can't wait to find out who his opponent's going to be. But this is going to be a very exciting round 5, just like it seems like it always is. It seems like we have so many amazing players in this tournament that it's very difficult for us not to get an exciting round feature match.
Absolutely.
We started the tournament with Michael Pramlott against Jason Klaczynski. How insane is that?
This tournament has a great combination that you rarely see, which is a huge number of players, 490, I think the most Masters ever, and then, world champions, world runner-up, regional champions, just this incredible number and just stacked of competition.
So as we're closing up this deck analysis, I do want to take a look at some of the final cards in the deck. Super Scoop Up, once again, just like AZ, is one of the cards that you really tends to shine in this deck. Once again, because you have a low energy attacker and you have Crobat. When you combine both of these things, cards like Super Scoop Up and AZ become, all-stars. And a single Super Scoop Up heads can mean the difference between winning and losing a match.
Absolutely. Super Scoop Up again, just like AZ, all the reasons we talked about. Get a Shaman back, get a Crobat back, even Jirachi, all your attackers that are taking damage, absolutely. The one interesting little strange thing, or not strange, but kind of nuanced thing about this deck is Focus Sash. You don't always see that in everything. It's gotten more popular lately, but we saw Dustin Zimmerman use Focus Sash to great effect.
Focus Sash is one of the main reasons to play Fighting right now. If it wasn't for Focus Sash, I don't think Fighting would even be viable, even though it's very strong. But when you have Focus Sash, you can now start resisting things like Vespiquen and Nightmarch. These are decks that would normally win matches against these decks, against Big EX decks, because they trade knockouts, but at the same time, you're taking 2 prizes, they take 1. With Focus Sash, you even the playing field to the point where now all of a sudden you're just running them out of energies, and you're not running out of Pokemon. So right. Focus Sash is the main reason to play Fighting right now, and I'm very excited to see other people start playing Fighting decks just because of that one reason alone. Oh man, I hear the announcement.
Yep, round's about to start. We've gotten deck lists. So yeah, looking at the rest of the deck, the rest of it's pretty standard. It's running your Sycamores, your Ends, Lysander, Colorus, Strong Energy, like you mentioned, one of the reasons to run Fighting right now. Just Fighting Pokemon are already aggressive. They already attack for low energy, and now this is making them even more powerful.
Yeah. So between Strong Energy, Muscle Band, Fighting Stadium, and then all of a sudden you have things like, for example, sometimes in some Fighting decks you have Archeops, you have Machamp, things like that. These are the main reasons to play Fighting, and I'm very excited to see things like the Crobat variant and stuff like that rise to the top because the deck is very strong. We saw Manectric Landorus come up. Now, we're going to have to see if Fighting continues its streak, but at the same time, forget about it. We've talked enough about that deck. I now want to talk about Round 5 because we finally have deck lists on hand. And the one player who I saw originally was Ross Cawthon. He was the player who I saw standing up about to sit down for his feature match. His opponent is no slacker himself. He's Jimmy Pendarvis.
Yeah, both of these guys, Ross Cawthon, what can you say about him yet? He's the only player to have been invited to every World Championship dating back to 2002, has 2 second-place finishes at the World Championship. I'm sure he's a multiple-time regional and state champion, just incredibly consistent.
Now,
Ross.
I don't know if these players are undefeated or not. I actually don't know what the records are, but I have to believe that their records are very good. That's probably why we featured them. And I'm sure that we'll get their records pretty soon. But at the same time, let's talk a little bit about the decks. It looks like we're seeing, we're seeing a mirror. We're seeing a mirror here. We're seeing Nightmarch against Nightmarch. Ross Cawthon, a man who is known for his deck building prowess, decided to go with, honestly, a very, very standard deck in Nightmarch. He has a Mr. Mime, which is kind of cool. It's different. But besides that, man, we are looking at a very standard Nightmarch deck list.
And that's the thing about Ross.
I guess we're hopping in pretty soon. So
looks like the round
looks like the match is about to begin. Yeah.
What I was saying, and that's the thing about Ross, is that he's built a lot of rogue decks. He's definitely known for playing something a little different, but he also knows when to settle down and when to just play the best deck. He got in 2013. He played Blastoise basically the whole season. He's definitely he knows what's going on. He's disciplined.
Yeah, and on the other side of the field, we saw Jimmy Pendarvis now playing with the Archeops. Archeops is a Pokemon that actually gets associated a lot with Nightmarch, so this is a very standard deck list from Jimmy. We might see him potentially maxi for 5 when his hand is empty, maybe off of a low end or something like that. That might be something to look out for. But for the most part, we're going to be looking at heavy damage from these players from basically turn 1 on.
Yeah, the Archeop's not too relevant in this matchup, but certainly it's been a good.
So it looks like these players are ready to begin, and now they flip over the cards. Jimmy Pendarvis on the right with Joltik start, and Ross Cawthon on the left with a Pump Caboose start. This is round 5. I am host Wade Crumbs-Rohano here with Kenny Wisdom, and it looks like we're getting ready to begin. If I had to guess, I'd say it's Ross's turn just because we haven't seen a card get played for about 10 seconds.
Yeah, he drew a card at the beginning. It's definitely his turn. The interesting thing about the Nightmarch deck, so Nightmarch is just kind of very aggressive, high damage, low energy, but the mirror actually gets pretty interesting. You don't want to discard all of your Nightmarchers in the mirror. You want to make sure that you have enough to attack because you are going to be trading attacks. You're not going to be able to knock out many EXs. You're going to be probably taking 6 prizes, maybe 4, or 6 Pokemon, maybe 4. And additionally, speaking of EXs, you really have to try your hardest not to play them just because of what I just said. Your opponent's going to be able to knock out any EX you play very easily. The only EXs you have are Shaman and Jirachi, very low HP. So the mirror really comes down to who can kind of mitigate their prizes. You have Mew as well, as you see the Mew EX in Ross's prizes there, which does matter. You typically, again, it's a low HP EX. You don't want to be playing it down. Sometimes you have to, but that's really what this matchup comes down to, I think, is just who can manage their Pokemon the best.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be seeing a Dimension Valley War or anything like that. Both players seem to play that card. So we're going to be seeing things like Pumpkaboo attack for 2 energy and stuff like that. So that'll be very relevant. Ross and Jimmy both don't want to play too many Nightmarchers onto their discard pile, specifically because they don't have very much HP to worry about. Like, for example, Joltik only has 30 hit points. Pumpkaboo has 60. These are not heavy. These are not difficult Pokemon to knock out for any deck, let alone a deck that deals hundreds of damage. So you don't want to overextend your discard pile. Maybe 3 Pokemon, like 3 Lampets in the discard, and you're happy at that point. Because remember, if your opponent ever attacks with Mew, then all of a sudden he's weak to Psychic. And your Pumpkaboo will be able to knock it out for 3, with 3 Pokemon.
Not to mention, even if you can just find the 4th, your opponent attacking with Mew is probably a good thing for you, as I was saying earlier.
Exactly.
Looking at the comparison between the lists, it looks like Ross is running 1 copy of Enhanced Hammer, which could end up mattering. You see that double colorless on Jimmy's side of the board. And it looks like Jimmy has a Teammates, which is a big difference. Could end up mattering as well. Teammates allowing you to search your deck for any 2 cards after a Pokemon has been knocked out. So even though these players are running the same archetype, they have a few cards different, a few interesting considerations to make.
I think Teammates is going to be a very important card. Enhanced Hammer, potentially not as much, specifically because you want to be knocking out your opponent's Pokemon, and you just kind of want to have an empty energy field on both sides of the board, assuming the matchup plays out the way it's supposed to. But definitely Teammates could be a very relevant card, especially when it comes down to just finding energies. Remember, it's not guaranteed that you're going to find double colorlesses every turn. So if anybody ever stalls out on their double colorless, well, then that's a perfect opportunity for them to, actually strike back.
And another interesting difference is Ross has 1 copy of Super Rod, while Jimmy has 1 Revive. So both very similar cards in what they do. Super Rod letting you shuffle 3 Pokemon and energy back into your deck, and Revive just putting a Pokemon from your discard right onto the board. So definitely, a few interesting differences. I think that the Revive is probably better in the mirror for just finding an attacker and being able to attack right away, but the Super Rod also lets you get more Pokemon back if the game goes long, if you need to dig for some Pokemon. So
and maybe like a Lightning Energy or something like that.
Right.
Both of these cards are very equal, very similar in power level. You did see Jimmy Juniper away a Shaman there rather than play it. Once again, favoring the fact that he doesn't want to get into any type of trouble with Lysanders later in the game. If he can ever find a way to Sky Return into a Joltik, he will. Trust me. That is going to be huge for Jimmy, and that's going to be a big way for him to really secure the fact that going first is going to put him in a big advantage. Does he have two Nightmarchers in the discard pile? Or 3, I mean?
I believe he has 3, but we don't have a count.
Okay. Hopefully he has 3, because that's exactly the number he needs. I know he battle compressed away 1.
Yeah, I saw him battle compress away the Lampent. Resolving a Trainer's Mail, looks like he's considering taking a Computer Search, which he does.
That's always a good one to get with Trainer's Mail.
Yeah, and like you were saying, the Shaman is not quite as big of a liability as cards like Jirachi can be, just because you can Sky Return, put the Shaman back into your hand, save it from being knocked out, but definitely playing EXs is not where you want to be in the matchup.
Interesting that Jimmy decides to play the Dimension Valley first. It doesn't look like he's going to be attacking with Pumpkaboo this turn, but I guess he just kind of wants to secure himself from an end that might be disastrous. We'll have to wait and see. But at the same time, Jimmy does take the first prize of the game, going second and attacking first, which could prove to be one of the big factors in this game, just because you're hoping to trade prizes every turn, literally from your first attack on.
Absolutely. We see Ross sitting with a lone Joltik, has some serious considerations to make. Like you were saying, Jimmy is up a prize, which, not the end of the world. There's still a lot of game to be played, but this is definitely, the ball is on Ross's court to fire back now and find a way to even this game up.
Yeah, remember, Ross still needs another energy to even attack, let alone, let alone knock the Joltik out. So now Ultra Ball from Ross gets rid of 2 Dimension Valleys, and Ross is now going to be finding himself a Pokemon desperately. He needs to get multiple Pokemon. He needs to get 1 more energy, and he needs to get, I want to say 1 more Night Marcher into the discard?
Yeah, he has 2 now.
Okay, so he does have enough for a knockout of the Joltik, but he still wants 1 more at some point.
Looks like Ross is going for that Shaman again. Going to use setup to draw back up to 6 cards. Hopefully hit another energy here. And similar to, when we showed the Seismitoad mirror match earlier, it was kind of the first player to win was usually the first player who could make their opponent break the Quaking Punch lock. And I think that'll be similar here with the first player that you don't have to use Nightmarch, but the first player that doesn't take a knockout here will be the one who's really on the back foot.
Yeah, for example here, Jimmy's next turn is going to be ideally a Sky Return with a Shaman to knock out a Joltik. If he can do that, then he'll be in great shape. Shaman here for 4 from Ross. Obviously Ross is looking for a Lysander, right? He hasn't played a supporter yet, I don't think.
He's not played a supporter yet. He's looking for an energy first and foremost. He does need another energy to attack with that Joltik.
Actually, he can knock it out with the Gnaw now because of the Muscle Band.
Oh, you're right.
So now at this point, he does want an energy if he wants to Lysander up a Shaman. Remember, by the way, that this is actually very, very clever by Ross. Now he makes it so that he can have multiple energy in play, because all he has to invest is 1 energy on his active, which he already had in play, to gnaw his opponent's Joltik into a knockout. This is a very clever play by Ross, and it might end up being a very relevant play moving forward, just because, once again, you're not guaranteed to draw energy cards every turn. So if he ever does falter, it'll be okay because he already found the right amount of energy.
Yeah, like we were saying, the first, you need to attack every turn, you need to exchange prizes, and if you can set it up so that you have energy on the bench when your opponent doesn't, that's one way to get ahead.
No kidding. So now if Ross is methodically trying to play out his turn, he does decide to
take a computer search off a trainer's mail.
Okay, that's what it was. Takes computer search off trainer's mail, which is something Jimmy did earlier.
Computer search, one of the most powerful cards in Expanded. One of the big differences now between Expanded and Standard. Just let you search your deck for any card, get you out of a lot of sticky situations.
And he's being careful not to overplay his board, but at the same time, I think you definitely want multiple Pumpkaboos in play. Like you said earlier, a big Lysander. Yeah. Lysander to get the Shaman. Does he have the energy to knock out the Shaman?
He does indeed. He just has a double colorless in hand. As long as he has 3 Night Marchers.
A double colorless energy for Ross Cawthon was going to give him enough energy to knock out the Shaman and bring him ahead in the prize exchange. And most importantly, Jimmy is not going to be able to knock out this Shaman this Joltik with his own Shaman, which is exactly what he wanted to do to get it out of harm's way from here on out.
Exactly. We just saw, he said, Jimmy's ahead of prize. Like, Ross needs to react here, and Ross certainly reacted. Ross considering what prizes to take now that it's public information with the town map.
Now, what does Jimmy do to return KO here? He's activating a Pumpkaboo, trying to make it a little bit more difficult for his opponent to knock him out with a Shaman. I think that's the right play. If you have a double colorless in hand, you're going to make your opponent have to attack you with a Night March on the following turn and not allow your opponent to, say, for example, Sky Return and get rid of a Shaman from play.
Yeah, definitely. By sending out the Pumpkaboo, he's just forcing Ross to take the knockout with a Night Marcher instead of the Shaman, which is very, very smart. This, like we said, a lot of how this matchup works is protecting your EXs.
So a double colorless energy does get fetched by the computer search, which is going to be enough for the Joltik to go down now. And now Jimmy Pendarvis returns the knockout, or he will anyway after an end. This is also very important, by the way, is the fact that he just ended his opponent down to 4 cards, and his opponent has no energy in play. Remember, he decided to invest an extra double colorless energy onto the Joltik instead of taking that knockout on his opponent's Joltik with a single lightning. So now this could end up backfiring for Ross. Ross is going to go down to 4 cards in his hand, no energy in play, and he needs to have a double colorless energy in order to knock out Pumpkaboo with his own Night March. I don't know if he's drawn it yet or not, but we'll have to wait and see because Jimmy still has to take his prize for with the Pumpkaboo knockout onto Joltik.
There's a Battle Compressor for Jimmy. Just going to thin his deck of some cards, get some extra Night Marchers in there, maybe just get some cards he doesn't want to play, maybe some Dimension Valleys that just can't be played for the rest of the game. And yeah, you're right. I mean, Ross, every turn, a player just needs to respond. And, Ross got the big KO on the on the Shaman, but now, like we were talking about earlier, Jimmy does have 2 energy in play, so he's going to have a guaranteed stream of KOs, unless, of course, Ross's Enhanced Hammer comes in to play, but...
Yeah, Ross does have that equalizer there in the Enhanced Hammer. He has to draw the Enhanced Hammer, obviously, but if he does and he manages to return knockout the Pumpkaboo, hey, guess what? Ball will now be in Ross's court, and Ross is going to be favored once again. This is a very back-and-forth matchup as we're seeing right now.
Absolutely, and you can see, now... As long as Ross can protect that Shaman, he is going to be ahead on prizes. He's taking at least one prize, or he's taking definitely one prize this turn, as long as he can attack. Whereas Jimmy still has 4 left, so it's Ross's game to win, but there's still a lot of game left. That Shaman's going to be very important. I don't see a double colorless in Ross's hand.
Yeah, remember, he got into 4 cards, so it's very difficult for him to have much of anything here. I actually feel like, and I hate to disagree with you, but I actually feel like Jimmy might be in the lead here. Granted, it's definitely Ross's turn, and he can make a comeback here, but it's close. It's a very close game right now, and it's up to Ross to draw himself out of this. He has to get a knockout here. Ideally, he would have gotten it with the Shaman, but obviously because Jimmy decided to activate the Pumpkaboo instead, the Shaman plays out of his hand. So now if Jimmy does have a Lysander or something like that, he'll be able to Lysander up the Shaman. That would be crucial. Ross, however, is still on his turn, and he needs to get a knockout here. He needs a double colorless energy.
Yeah, it looks like Ross taking a look through his discard pile. He does have 3 Versus Seeker in hand, I believe, as well as an Ultra Ball and a Lampent. So, gonna get that Lamp in the discard pile with Ultra Ball, I imagine. But the supporter, he's gonna have to play a draw supporter or find a Shaman here. Because, like we said, he needs that energy to attack. He needs to...
Remember that if he finds a Shaman, he'll have exactly 2 EX targets in play, so his opponent can just Lysander to win the game if he doesn't find a way to get rid of a Shaman from play. This is a very chess-like matchup, actually. A very aggressive chess-like matchup. It's like, checkmate in 3 or checkmate in 4 or something like that, but it's definitely going to be a very aggressive matchup in which each player has to play very carefully.
Absolutely. You can see Ross getting a Pumpkaboo, playing it on the bench, and... we're going to see a Versus Seeker for something here, but if Ross misses the energy, that might just be it. Obviously, the game won't actually immediately end, but Jimmy might just pull so far ahead.
I mean, the game could theoretically immediately end if Ross just scoops. So we do see a Juniper. Remember, 3 Versus Seekers down the drain. The Juniper has to find him a double colorless energy. Does he find it?
He has the computer search.
Okay, we do see a computer search, which is huge for Ross. That means he's going to be able to find it. He'll be able to stay in this game. But with no supporter, and unless he has an Enhanced Hammer, does he have an Enhanced Hammer, I guess, is the big question. I guess not, because he would have played it. I think his turn would have been very straightforward if he had Computer Search plus Enhanced Hammer. Yeah, or definitely. Computer Search plus double colorless. One of the 2.
He can play the Trainer's Mail, try and find the Enhanced Hammer. I imagine he'd do that after the Computer Search, thin out his deck a little bit of non-Enhanced Hammer cards. That's what he's going to do. Computer Search Joltik away, and then that Mr. Mime, which doesn't have much utility in this matchup.
So the double colorless energy is at the bottom of his deck. He's going to find it right now. But remember, he still wants to find an Enhanced Hammer. That's how he's going to put himself back into this game. He wants that Enhanced Hammer really bad, and he does have a Trainer's Mail to find it. It's going to be difficult because there's, I believe, only a single Enhanced Hammer in his list.
Yep, just the one.
So he's definitely not favored to draw it. But there is always that puncher's chance. I love saying that phrase. All right, there it is. Trainer's Mail goes for 4 cards. He holds it at an angle where we can't really see it, but Battle Compressor is the card he finds.
Battle Compressor is not a bad one to find here. Lets him thin his deck of cards. He's not going to need, those Dimension Valleys can't be played for the rest of the game. He still has a Lampent in there, but he was definitely hoping for the Enhanced Hammer. You can see it in his deck too, right in the middle.
Yeah, it was still in the deck, which means he definitely could have drawn it, but it was not meant to be in that specific situation. So now he has to settle for just thinning his deck out a little bit more. Remember, it's not like the game's over. He can still find another turn where he can Enhance Hammer. He still has, I believe, 1 more turn to be able to pull it off, maybe even 2, depending on how the rest of these turns go. But he needs to find it at some point in this matchup in order to bring himself back up to even.
Definitely, and we see he did find the double colorless off of the Computer Search. Going to go ahead and take the knockout here.
Ross does attach the double colorless, and thanks to Dimension Valley, we'll be able to knock out the Pumpkaboo. Nightmarch only requires a double colorless energy in order for him to attack there. And now it looks like Jimmy's going to be activating that Joltik. Now, if Jimmy has a Lysander, does he Lysander up the Shaman and take 2 prizes, or does he just get rid of the last double colorless and Ross's side of the board? It's tough, man. It's not easy.
I think I'm not sure how many double colorless Rosses use, but that's definitely a consideration too. Which is how can Jimmy put Ross in a position where he can't find a double colorless? Like you were saying, knocking out the Shamans can be important because they can Sky Return back to their hand. So that's definitely an option for Jimmy, but also just eliminating all the energy on Ross's side of the board while hopefully attaching one of his own is also a huge play.
And remember, Jimmy doesn't necessarily know Ross's deck list. Like, I can't imagine Jimmy going, like, actively trying to play around in Enhanced Hammer.
Oh, for sure.
I think it's one of those things where if you have a double colorless, you kind of just want to play it and avoid any end problems. Mm-hmm. You rarely fear the Enhanced Hammer. So if at any point Ross can just strike with it. Oh, he does go with a Versus Seeker for the Lysander. Lysander brings up a Shaman EX. Joltik will knock out that Shaman EX with ease, but that leaves double colorless energy on the field for Ross Cawthon, which means Ross is going to have a very easy next turn.
It also means that Ross essentially can't play another EX. It's if he does, he has the fear of the game ending immediately.
Yeah.
Which definitely puts some strain on him. So especially even he can't play another Shaman. He also is like very, very disadvantaged from playing another Mew, so he just something to think about for sure.
Once Jimmy gets one more knockout, though, Ross will be able to play all the EXs he wants with these.
Absolutely.
At that point, he'll be fine. He'll be able to, unleash all the EXs onto the board. But until that happens, remember, once again, Jimmy still needs to find himself some double colorless energies, I guess just double colorless energies. He needs to find these things. I guess theoretically, Jimmy could always go with a return knockout on a Joltik with a Gnaw, assuming he has a Muscle Band, which I believe he does. No, maybe he doesn't. No, he does not play. Oh yeah, okay, he does. He does play the Muscle Band. So if he does find a way, oh no, yeah, he does have Lightning too. So Jimmy could always do that himself. Muscle Band plus Lightning Energy to knock out a Joltik.
Looks like Ross is getting rid of his 0-6 with a Battle Compressor. He could. Well, I guess there's no energy on Jimmy's side of the board, so that's just throwing in the discard pile, throwing away that Mew as well. Like we said, huge liability to play an EX at this point in the game.
Oh, man.
And the last Pumpkaboo.
Teammates is going to be the card for Jimmy, I think. Teammates is going to be the big way that Jimmy's going to be able to secure this game.
Yeah, Teammates seems really good. I mean, Teammates is, kind of a new updated version of Twins, which is one of my favorite cards ever. But
yeah.
In this matchup in particular, it seems really good. Just, I don't have any energy on board. Well, I top deck a Teammates. Now I'm going to get whatever I need. It's energy Lysander. It's, Joltik energy, whatever it is.
Big Juniper by Ross is going to find him additional cards. Remember, he's had that double colorless in place since the beginning of his turn, which means he'll be able to attach another double colorless, and he does. Now, a double colorless energy onto the bench Pumpkaboo is actually huge. I know it seems weird that I get excited about an energy attachment, but this is actually really important. If Ross ever falters in energies, it's so important to let you guys know that if he ever falters in energies, the game might just flat out end. So him finding these energies is crucial. That's how he stays in this game.
And Ross with the Teammates of his own didn't notice it on the deck list the first time, but he does have it in his hand now, which could end up mattering for sure. Jimmy will still have to knock out a non-EX Pokemon, take one prize, and then that Teammates is active.
I wonder what Jimmy has in his hand. I think that's the big question here. I think that's what's going to decide whether Jimmy wins this game or if Ross does. If Jimmy has any type of comeback potential here in this hand, he'll probably win the match, or the game, just based on prize exchanges alone. If he doesn't, though, then Ross's energies on the field are just going to be too much. It's so easy for these decks to falter, and neither one has yet, That's the big thing, is neither of these decks has really been the first one to give yet.
Yeah, definitely. And both of these players doing us no favors. Jimmy holding his hand face down the entire game, and Ross holding it just out of the camera's view, so...
I like it, though. It provides excitement.
Absolutely.
All right. Now, Jimmy, what's he going to decide to activate? He's going to activate a Pumpkaboo. Not really that telling. Actually, you know what I see is 2 Muscle Bands already on the field. So that actually means that the Joltik with the Lightning Energy is not a play he can make. Very interesting, because that's one way for him to get that final prize, is just a random Lysander onto a Joltik and then Muscle Band plus Lightning once you run out of double colorlesses and stuff like that. But that's not going to be the kind of play that we're going to have available to us, because Jimmy does have both Muscle Bands already on the field.
Yeah, definitely a lot of interesting plays you can make with this deck. I've definitely seen not so much in the mirror, of course, but I've definitely seen Mew EX copy some Quaking Punches, copy some Seismitoads, copy a lot. It's interesting that the Mew EX often overlooked is that you can copy any attack on the board, not just your own.
Oh, yeah. Man, okay. So how many double colorlesses are gone for Jimmy? 3? I think it's 3.
I believe so, but don't quote me on that. All right, here's the Juniper. This is the moment of truth.
Juniper for 6. He does find one double colorless energy. One double colorless energy is going to be enough to knock out this Pumpkaboo, but remember, he still has to find a way to get one final knockout here. This is only part of the puzzle here. He still needs to find one more knockout. How will Jimmy be able to pull it off with both muscle bands gone? The single energy knockout is not potential. I want to see his deck. I don't know if I see a double colorless. Is there a double colorless in Jimmy's deck?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either, man. I think that was really the fourth double colorless.
I think that's the fourth one.
Which really, really makes me...
Nope, there's one left. There's one left.
Okay. So if there is one double colorless energy, then Jimmy does still have the opportunity to win here. He can either rely on his teammates, or he can rely on just naturally drawing the double colorless. But that is how Jimmy wins this match, or this game. He'll knock out the Ross's Pokemon, goes down to a single prize, which he just does, and now Ross is going to return knockout, but Jimmy needs that last double colorless in order for him to win the game.
And you do see Jimmy Ultra Ball there, just thinning his deck out. He has a Juniper in his hand. He knows that next turn, he knows his Pokemon's getting knocked out. He's going to have to promote next turn and hope to find that energy.
Ross attaches a lightning energy to his Joltik. Not too relevant anymore. As a matter of fact, at this point, any type of knockout from Jimmy just wins him the game. He's down to a single prize. And it's not like that Pumpkaboo's going to get hit and not get knocked out.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to count how many cards were in Jimmy's deck, but it's not many, so he has a pretty good chance of hitting the...
All right, down goes the Pumpkaboo. If he has a teammates, he just wins. If he has a teammates or a battle compressor for teammates.
Looks like he's searching out.
I mean, he might not have too many more cards than 7. He might have like 10 left. So a Trainer's Mail. Trainer's Mail finds him 1, 2, 3, 4 cards. It finds him a battle compressor. And there is a teammates. Yeah. Teammates is going to get played and is going to find him his final double colorless energy. Down goes Ross's final Pokemon. And Jimmy Pendarvis, just like he drew it up, wins game 1.
Teammates, man, it's clutch.
Being the first one to attack seems very important in this matchup. I wonder if Ross is going to choose to go second, and now that he gets to choose who goes first or second.
It's possible. Typically going first, the conventional wisdom says going first is
conventional wisdom, huh?
Where you want is where you want to be. But going second, yeah, I've definitely seen a lot of discussions about the potential of going second in things like the Nightmarch mirror or the Blastoise mirror, things like that, where the first to attack is really important.
Yeah. So conventional wisdom says that you want to go first. However, in this matchup specifically, you might want to change your mind and actually go second. I think you do. I think that we saw Jimmy win specifically because he went second. Neither of these players didn't take a prize from turn 2 on.
Right.
Every player took a prize turn 2 on. We saw Joltik with a Muscle Band and a Lightning almost take a prize card onto an active Joltik, I believe, and then actually chose to attach the double colorless energy onto his own Joltik and Lysander up a Shaman. That almost brought Ross back up to even, but eventually it was just not meant to be. He invested so many energy cards onto his actual active that it was a back and forth that Jimmy just happened to win.
Absolutely. And it's really interesting. This matchup actually, it's pretty simple. You're just attacking with Night Marchers, but it's pretty interesting. You want to find the energy. It's pretty exciting every turn. Oh, but he's going to find the energy. He's going to find the energy. He's going to find the Lysander. So it's definitely been a fun one to watch.
It's one of those matches that's just so rare. Like most of the time, there's so many other things that you have to worry about where the energy attachments are just, you kind of assume they're going to naturally happen just because you're worried about so many other things. But in this one, you're not worried about anything. As soon as you get through 3 Pokemon in your discard pile that have Nightmarch, you're like, all right, cool. Now, at this point, I just want to make sure I attack every turn.
Right, exactly.
So as long as you find these energies, that's what matters. And it seems like both of these players have a firm grasp on the matchup. They didn't seem to falter there. They seemed to really know what they were doing. And it's just a matter of them being able to execute their game plan. Remember, Ross does happen to have that Enhance Hammer. That could end up being very, very crucial.
Absolutely. And like you said, both of these players, Ross is one of the most decorated players in the game. Jimmy's not quite that level, but he's certainly no slouch. Both of these players have qualified for Worlds multiple times. They definitely know what they're doing, and looks like we're ready to get back to the game. That both players are getting set up. Looks like Jimmy took a mulligan, so Ross does have 1 extra card, which could end up mattering, in a race where you're trying to find all the cards definitely an extra draw could end up mattering.
Looks like Game 2 is about to get underway. We see Jimmy Pendarvis and Ross Cawthon both look at their hands, and now the game begins. Mr. Mime start for Ross against a Pumpkaboo start for Jimmy.
And it looks like Jimmy is going to go first. Ross opted to go second. Like we were saying, conventional wisdom is you want to go first, but in these kind of matchups where the first to attack really matters, Ross has chosen to go second. Like you said, he also started with that Mr. Mime. That can send him back for sure. He's going to need a float stone on it. He's going to need to find some way to switch it out of the active without attaching, or he's going to be right back to square one where he's wasted not only energy, but a possible attack.
Yeah, and remember, he chose to go second so that he could attack turn 1. So he only has one turn to find these cards. He has one turn to find the float stone. And I doubt he plays very many of more than one. One float stone, exactly, yeah. So it's not going to be easy for him to find it. He has one computer search and one float stone to find these cards. He needs them both in order to be able to start attacking from turn 1 on. That is just not the right Pokemon you want to start with if you're Ross.
And the Mr. Mime, a concession to things like Kyogre EX in the Blastoise deck, Landorus EX like we talked about earlier, but in this matchup, doesn't do much for you.
A Hex Maniac from Jimmy, kind of basically hoping that Ross just doesn't have a float stone in hand, because if he does have a float stone in hand, then maybe the Hex Maniac won't be as strong. But if he doesn't, then at that point he was normally going to rely on Shamans and whatnot in order to draw it. But Hex Maniac kind of stops that dead in its tracks.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like Ross definitely has some options, but not being able to set up with that Shaman is going to hurt him. Here comes a Battle Compressor.
The perfect starting card for Ross there.
Oh, the perfect starting card for just so many decks. I mean, Battle Compressor looks like this little innocuous card, doesn't do much, makes you discard cards, but is actually just a pivotal point of the format, just an incredibly strong card. And really what makes all of these decks tick. We talk about Nightmarch, Vespiquen, Blastoise, all these different decks that have won regionals and seen a lot of success lately heavily rely on a full 4 copies of Battle Compressor.
One of the strongest cards in the game, even in Standard, let alone in Expanded, where you have even more options.
Absolutely. Looks like Ross is going to take his time and figure out what exactly to discard. Taking a look at Jimmy's discard. Ross is definitely one of the more methodical players in the game. Definitely believes, finding the right play, taking your time. And
you're definitely right about that one. Ross has been known for, to players and now spectators for years now as one of the slower players in the game. However, it's not like the guy makes a misplay either. The guy does make sure that he uses his time wisely. He's looking at so many different options when he's looking through his deck. There's a lot of players that just go like, all right, there's 4 double colorless. All right, there's 4 lampant.
Right.
I'm good. And no, Ross will take take into account not only his float stone and stuff like that, but he'll take into account pretty much every card except for a couple irrelevant ones.
Yeah, no, for sure. Ross is, he definitely takes his time, but he definitely is one of the best players, one of the most solid players in the game. I like to say that Ross is technically perfect besides playing Mismatch Energy. if he decided, if he cared about how his deck looked, then he's just perfect. But
there's some conventional wisdom from Kenny himself right there.
Looks like Ross is getting
To get the first knockout of the game.
Yeah, he's going to need a lot of resources here. That Mr. Mime start certainly setting him back quite a ways. I do see that he has the double colorless, but I do not see the computer search.
He is discarding cards, so maybe the computer search is the first card in that discard.
Yeah, the one on the
we'll
bottom.
have to wait and see. It could be an Ultra Ball for like a Shaman or something too.
Well, it is a computer search.
It is computer search, so he found the computer search, and I'm going to assume that Ross looked through his deck in order to see if the Floatstone was there earlier when he was searching through his deck.
Jimmy's pointing out is, is he allowed to change at this point? He started shuffling. The hard part is that you can't easily reverse this action,
Yeah,
because it's the cards face down. So
I mean, it is the top card in the hand, but at the same time, it's like one of those things where you just don't do it. I mean, that's a part of the rules. That's a part of the tournament rules. As a competitive player, you understand, and this goes both ways. This goes for every competitive player. You understand that once you've made a decision and you've started.
Still a little bit, just because we don't want to let you guys just have you guys stare at a couple of things. Yeah, talking to a judge or anything like that.
No one wants to watch.
Might as well stare at our pretty little faces, right?
Yeah.